And it's crucial for our economy. It's crucial for American families.
You made $10 million helping Travelers Insurance screw asbestos victims. You want to talk about my corruption? Donald Trump's voice cut across the CNN town hall stage. Elizabeth Warren, who'd been walking off after her own segment, froze mid-step. The audience, 200 people who'd just spent an hour applauding her attacks on corporate greed, went completely silent. Trump stood at the moderator's table holding a thick folder, not sitting in the guest chair like a normal town hall participant, standing like a prosecutor. Mr. President, that's not Anderson Cooper tried to regain control. Too late. Senator Warren just spent 60 minutes calling me corrupt. Trump continued voice-carrying to every corner of the hall, telling these good people how I sold out to corporations, how I betrayed working families. So, I think it's only fair we talk about the $10.3 million she made from the corporations she claims to fight. Anderson, can we bring the senator back out here since she wants to discuss corruption? Warren stood in the stage wings, her team clustered around her, whispering frantically, "Walk away and look guilty or go back out there and face whatever Trump had in that folder." The audience started chanting, "Bring her back! Bring her back!" She had no choice. Cameras were rolling, millions watching. She walked back onto the stage, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "I'm happy to address whatever baseless Trump slapped the folder on the table between them." Documents spilled out. Contracts with corporate letterheads. Bank statements. Her signature visible on photocopied checks. Travelers Insurance $212,000. You helped them avoid paying dying workers. Dow Chemical $100,000. You helped them dodge environmental liability. LTV Steel $90,000. You helped them cut pensions. He picked up each document as he spoke, let it drop back to the table. "That's not baseless, Professor. That's your signature, your bank account, your $10 million. Warren's mouth opened. Nothing came out. So before we talk about my corruption, Trump said, "Let's talk about yours." That morning, Elizabeth Warren woke in her $5.4 million home in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The house, a beautiful Victorian in one of the city's most expensive neighborhoods, was filled with morning light. Her assistant had already delivered the newspapers. The New York Times had a front-page story about income inequality. Warren smiled. Perfect timing for tonight's town hall. She walked to her home office, past the bookshelves filled with academic texts about bankruptcy law and consumer protection, past the framed photos of her with Barack Obama, with Hillary Clinton, with Bernie Sanders. The progressive wing of the party, the fighters, the people who understood that the system was rigged. Her chief of staff arrived at 7:30 with coffee and the briefing book for the CNN town hall. "Let's go through the key attacks one more time," Warren said, settling into her leather chair, the same chair she'd sat in when writing her book about corporate corruption. The same chair where she'd prepared for Senate hearings. This was her space, her power base. Attack 1. Her chief of staff began. His corporate tax cuts. "You say he gave $800 billion to corporations and the wealthy while working families got nothing. You cite the specific companies that got the biggest cuts. You name names. Make it personal." Warren nodded, making notes. Apple, Amazon corporations that don't pay their fair share. "I've got the numbers. I can quote them." Attack 2. His cabinet of billionaires and corporate executives. Treasury Secretary from Goldman Sachs. Commerce Secretary worth $3 billion. You say he didn't drain the swamp. He filled it with corporate lobbyists. "I have all their names," Warren said. "Their net worths, their corporate ties. It's devastating." Attack 3. his broken promises to workers. He said he'd fight for them. Instead, he rolled back overtime protections, weakened unions, let corporations keep shipping jobs overseas. Warren was getting energized now, her professorial instincts kicking in. This was what she did best, taking complex economic issues and making them personal, showing working families exactly how they'd been betrayed. And then, I pivot to my vision, she said. What I would do differently, actual structural change, tax the wealthy, break up big banks, empower workers. The whole economic patriotism framework. Her communications director joined them, pulling up polling data on her tablet. You're at 14% for 2028, third place behind Newsom and Whitmer. But your favorables with progressives are strong, 83%. If you nail this tonight, if you really land the anti-corruption message, you can move up maybe into first place. Warren felt the familiar rush, the same feeling she'd had before big Senate hearings, before her Consumer Financial Protection Bureau testimony, before every moment when she got to be the crusading professor taking on the powerful. What time is Trump's segment? She asked. 8:30. You go first at 7. So you set the narrative. He spends his whole time responding to you. You control the terrain. Perfect. She'd learned this in academia. Whoever frames the debate wins the debate. She would frame tonight as a referendum on corporate corruption, on Trump's betrayal of working families. By the time Trump took the stage, the audience would already be primed to see him as the villain. What Warren didn't know, couldn't have imagined, was that at that exact moment, 300 meters away in New York, Trump was in his own preparation session. Trump Tower, 68th floor. Trump sat at the head of his conference table, surrounded by his campaign team, his lawyers, and several thick binders of research. Show me what we have on Warren, he said. No small talk, no preliminaries, just business. His lead opposition researcher, a former investigative journalist who'd spent 20 years digging into corporate corruption before Trump hired her, opened the first binder. Senator Elizabeth Warren, age 74, senator from Massachusetts since 2013. Before that, Harvard law professor for 19 years. Her brand is consumer advocate, champion of working families, takes on corporate greed. I know her brand, Trump said. I want to know what's behind the brand. The researcher smiled. That's where it gets interesting. Between 1995 and 2012, while she was a Harvard professor, positioning herself as a consumer advocate, she made $10.3 million working as a consultant and expert witness for corporations. She pulled out contracts, real documents, Warren's signature, visible on each one, travelers' insurance. They were facing massive asbestos liability. Thousands of workers dying from methyloma. Travelers hired Professor Warren as their expert witness in bankruptcy proceedings. Paid her to $12,000. Her job helped them restructure in a way that minimized what they'd have to pay to dying workers. Trump leaned forward. She helped an insurance company avoid paying asbestos victims. Exactly. And that's just one example. Dow Chemical hired her to minimize their environmental liability after a chemical leak. LTV Steel hired her to help them cut worker pensions during bankruptcy. She was the hired gun for exactly the kind of corporations she now attacks in speeches. How much total? Trump asked. $10.3 million over 17 years, all from corporations. All while she was writing academic papers and giving speeches about how corporations exploit working families. Trump sat back. That's beautiful hypocrisy. What else? His lawyer took over. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. She designed it, advocated for it, almost ran it before Republicans blocked her appointment. It's her signature achievement. And it's been a political slush fund. Between 2011 and 2017, the CFPB forced banks to pay $5.4 billion in settlements. But instead of that money going to harmed consumers, it was funneled to progressive activist organizations. La Raza got $300 million. Urban League got $270 million. Community organizing groups, housing, counseling, nonprofits, all left-wing organizations. Trump absorbed this. She built a government agency that forces banks to pay billions to political groups. Exactly. It was designed that way from the beginning. Warren created a mechanism to funnel taxpayer money through bank settlements to activist groups that would support progressive candidates. That's not consumer protection, Trump said. That's money laundering. His campaign manager added the next piece. Then there's her Senate trading. She's been on banking committee since 2013, gets classified briefings about upcoming regulations, about financial markets, about what's coming. And her trading records show a very interesting pattern. He pulled up spreadsheets, dates, stock purchases, regulatory announcements. March 2015, classified briefing about new credit card regulations. 3 days later, she buys 20,000 in Visa stock. Week after that, regulations announced deed favorable to credit card companies. Visa jumps 12%. She makes $2,400 profit. July 2016, classified briefing about European banking crisis and how it'll affect U.S. banks. 2 days later, she sells 50,000 in financial sector stocks. Crisis hit stocks drop 15%. She avoided 7,000 in losses. September 2017, briefing about loosening certain regulations. Next day, she buys Bank of America stock. Regulations announced, stock up 9%. Trump listened as they went through more examples. 23 trades total, each one coming within days of a classified banking committee briefing. Each one profitable or loss avoiding. That's insider trading, Trump said simply. Technically, members of Congress are exempt from standard insider trading laws under the speech or debate clause. But the Stock Act of 2012 was supposed to close that loophole. She's violating the Stock Act. Made herself about $2.4 to $4 million doing it. Trump stood up, walked to the window overlooking Central Park. Thought about the calculation. Warren was going to use tonight to attack his corporate connections, his billionaire cabinet, his policies that helped the wealthy. She thought that was her strength. Her moral authority. She's going to come after me on corruption tonight, he said. That's her whole play. She's the clean professor. I'm the corrupt businessman. That's the plan, his campaign manager confirmed. Trump turned back to the table. So here's what we do. Let her have her full hour. Let her attack me. Let her think she's won. Then, during my segment, I bring all of this out. And I asked CNN to bring her back on stage. His team looked at each other. That's not how town halls work. His lawyer said, she'll already be done. She'll be backstage. I know, but when I start showing this evidence, CNN will bring her back because it'll be the biggest story of the year, and she won't be able to refuse without looking guilty. It's completely unprecedented, his campaign manager said. Good. Unprecedented gets ratings, and it means she can't prepare, can't have her spin team craft a response. She'll have to answer live on camera with millions watching. Trump smiled. She wants to talk about corruption. We'll talk about corruption. Hers. His researcher asked the key question. What if she handles it well? What if she's prepared for this? Trump shook his head. She won't be, because she thinks she's untouchable. She thinks her academic credentials and her consumer advocate image protect her. She doesn't realize that I've been investigating her for 2 months, and I have receipts for everything. He looked at the binders of evidence, contracts, tax returns, trading records, bank statements, settlement documents. All of it obtained legally through public records, FOIA requests, and opposition research. Her entire career is built on attacking corporate corruption while secretly profiting from it. Tonight, America finds out who she really is. By early afternoon, Warren was in makeup at CNN's Atlanta studios, feeling confident. She'd reviewed her attacks. She knew her statistics. She'd practiced the righteous anger. The disappointed professor toned the fighting spirit that resonated with working families. Her team was excited. This was their moment. Relaunch Warren as the 2028 fighter, the one who'd stand up to corporate power, the one who'd learned from 2020 and come back stronger. At 6:30, she walked onto the stage for a final tech check. The audience was filing in. 200 carefully selected voters, half Democrats, half independents. Friendly enough territory. CNN had promoted this for weeks. Back-to-back town halls, Warren versus Trump. The contrast couldn't be clearer. 7:02. Anderson Cooper walked out to applause, introduced Senator Warren. She took the stage to strong applause from the Democratic half of the audience. Felt the energy. This was going to be good. Senator Warren, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for having me, Anderson. I'm excited to talk directly to hardworking families about the challenges they're facing and how we can fix a system that's rigged against them. First question came from a young woman in scrubs. Senator, I'm a nurse. I work 50 hours a week and I can barely afford rent. How do you plan to address income inequality? Warren leaned forward. This was her wheelhouse. That's exactly why I ran for Senate. Because I saw families like yours working hard, playing by the rules, doing everything right, and still struggling. While billionaires and big corporations pay less in taxes than you do. The system is rigged, and we need leaders who will unrig it. Applause. Warren warming up. Donald Trump gave $800 billion in tax cuts to corporations and the wealthy. Apple, Amazon, the biggest companies in America. They paid less in taxes after Trump's cuts than before. Meanwhile, working families like yours got crumbs. That's not economic policy. That's corruption. Bigger applause. Warren was hitting her stride now. For the next hour, she methodically prosecuted the case against Trump, his corporate cabinet, his broken promises to workers, his policies that helped the wealthy. She had statistics. She had examples. She had the moral authority of the Harvard professor who'd spent her career studying this. The audience ate it up. The Democratic half applauded enthusiastically. Even some independents seemed persuaded. By the time Cooper thanked her at 8:15, Warren's team was ecstatic. She walked off stage to sustained applause, went straight to the green room where her staff was celebrating. That was perfect, her chief of staff said. You dominated, set the whole narrative. Trump's going to spend his entire segment playing defense. Warren allowed herself a smile. She'd done what she came to do, reminded America why they couldn't trust Trump, positioned herself as the alternative, the fighter, the one who understood how the system worked and how to fix it. Let's get out of here, she said. I want to be on the road before Trump even starts. But as she was gathering her things, a production assistant knocked on the door. Senator, Mr. Cooper would like you to stay in case there are any follow-up questions during Mr. Trump's segment. Warren's chief of staff frowned. That's not standard. She's done her hour. I know, but Mr. Cooper specifically requested it just in case. Warren felt a flicker of unease, but she couldn't refuse without seeming like she was avoiding something. Fine, I'll stay. She settled onto the green room couch, half watching the monitor as Trump walked onto the stage at 8:30. Same stage she'd just dominated, but Trump didn't sit in the guest chair. He walked to the moderator's table, set down a folder, and stood there. That was odd. Cooper tried to start normally. Mr. President, welcome. Our first question. The audience member stood. Mr. President, Senator Warren just spent an hour calling you corrupt. What's your response? Trump picked up his folder. I'm glad she brought up corruption. Michael Warren sat up straighter. Something in his tone, because I have some documents here about her corruption that I think everyone would be interested in. Warren's chief of staff stood up. What is he talking about? On screen, Trump was asking if Warren was still in the building, asking CNN to bring her back out. Senator Warren has agreed to rejoin us, Cooper said. What? Warren's team erupted. You can't. The production assistant was back. Senator, they're asking you to return to the stage. Warren's mind raced. Refuse and look like she was hiding something, or go back out there and face whatever Trump had in that folder. The audience was chanting now. She could hear it from the green room. Bring her back. Bring her back. She stood up, smoothed her blazer. Let's get this over with. Walked back down the hallway, through the wings onto the stage for the second time that night. The applause was polite, but confused. This wasn't how town halls worked. She took the seat across from Trump, maintaining her professional demeanor. I'm happy to address whatever baseless accusations you're making, but I want to be clear, this is inappropriate. Trump opened the folder and Warren's world began to crumble. Trump picked up the first document like he was handling evidence in a courtroom, which in a way he was. This was a trial. He was the prosecutor. She was the defendant. And 200 people were the jury. Travelers, insurance, he said, his voice carrying clearly across the silent hall. December 1995. They paid you $212,000. He held up the contract so the camera could see it. Warren's name clearly visible. The amount clearly visible. Her signature at the bottom. You know what you were doing for them. Helping them avoid paying asbestos victims. These were working people, miners, construction workers, shipyard workers who got myeloma from asbestos exposure. Dying men who needed money for their medical bills. For their families and travelers, insurance owed them that money. But travelers hired you, Professor Warren, as their expert witness, and you helped them restructure their bankruptcy in a way that minimized what they'd have to pay. He slid the document across the table. Warren stared at it. That was definitely her signature, her contract, her money. She tried to regain footing. That was legitimate expert testimony in a complex bankruptcy proceeding. I provided analysis on bankruptcy law, which is standard practice. You were a hired gun helping an insurance company screw dying workers. Trump picked up another document. Let's not pretend it was anything else. Dow Chemical, October 1996. They paid you $100,000. Their plant in Midland, Texas had leaked toxic chemicals into the groundwater. People in the surrounding community got sick. Cancer rates spiked. Dow was facing massive environmental liability. They hired you to help them minimize what they'd have to pay to the victims. Another contract, another signature, another check. Warren's throat felt tight. Environmental liability cases involve complex questions of causation, and they involve corporations poisoning people and not wanting to pay for it. And you helped them. Trump was relentless, now pulling document after document from his folder. LTV Steel, January 1998, $90,000. Steel company going through bankruptcy. They had pension obligations to workers who'd spent 30, 40 years building that company. Steel workers who'd been promised pensions. You helped LTV cut those pensions, helped them avoid their obligations. He spread the documents across the table like a dealer spreading cards. 6 contracts, 8 contracts, 10 contracts, all with Warren's name, all with corporate checks. Between 1995 and 2012, you made $10.3 million consulting for corporations. And not just any corporations, insurance companies, chemical companies, steel companies, Dow Chemical, United Airlines, General Electric, the exact corporations you now claim to fight. Trump picked up her tax returns from those years, public records that he'd obtained legally and now held up for the camera. Your income professor public record, 95 through 2012, shows exactly who was paying you. Travelers, insurance, Dow Chemical, LTV Steel, all of them right there in black and white. You were on their payroll for 17 years. The audience was completely silent, every eye on Warren, waiting to see how she'd explain this. Anderson Cooper tried to give her an opening. Senator Warren, how do you respond to these specific dollar amounts? Warren's mind was racing. She'd done that work decades ago. It was all legal, all proper, expert testimony in bankruptcy cases. But Trump was making it sound like she'd been betraying workers, like she'd been on the wrong side. The amounts are being taken completely out of context, she said, her professorial tone wavering slightly. In bankruptcy proceedings, courts require expert analysis on complex legal questions. I provided that analysis. That's completely different from it's exactly the same. Trump's voice was matter-of-fact, not angry, just stating facts. You helped corporations avoid paying workers and victims. They paid you millions. Now you stand on stages and attack those same corporations. You call them greedy. You call them corrupt. But you were their lawyer. You were on their side making millions from them. He turned to address the audience directly. How many of you have dealt with insurance companies that wouldn't pay claims, had your benefits cut, had your pensions reduced? Several hands went up. She made $10 million helping them do that to you. Helping travelers avoid paying asbestos victims. Helping Dow avoid environmental liability. Helping LTV cut pensions. And then she runs for Senate on a platform of fighting those exact same companies. Trump pulled out another set of documents, thicker, more official-looking. Now, let's talk about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Your baby, your greatest achievement. You designed it. You advocated for it. You wanted to run it until Republicans blocked you. He opened the documents to show organizational charts and settlement agreements. The CFPB was supposed to protect consumers from predatory banks, and it did force banks to pay billions in settlements. Between 2011 and 2017, $5.4 billion in settlements. Sounds great, right? Banks breaking the law, forced to pay, consumers protected. He paused. Let the number sit there. Except the money didn't go to consumers. It went to political organizations. Warren jumped in. That's completely false. The CFPB has returned billions to consumers who were harmed by Trump talked over her. $5.4 billion went to left-wing activist groups. Anderson, can we show this on screen? CNN reluctantly put up a list. Organizations amounts. La Raza, $300 million. Urban League, $270 million. National Council of Women's Organizations, $180 million. National Community Reinvestment Coalition, $150 million. Dozens of community organizing groups, housing counseling nonprofits, all progressive political organizations. Warren's voice rose. Those are legitimate housing counseling organizations providing services to underserved communities. They're political organizations. Trump picked up descriptions of these groups' activities. La Raza lobbies for immigration reform. Urban League endorses political candidates. These aren't consumer protection groups. They're activist organizations. And you funneled $5 billion taxpayer dollars to them. He showed the mechanism how the settlements worked. Banks got in trouble. CFPB forced them to pay. But instead of the money going to the specific consumers who were harmed, Warren's CFPB directed it to these approved organizations. Here's how it worked. Trump explained to the audience, bank does something wrong, charges improper fees. Maybe the people who actually paid those fees should get refunds, right? But Warren's CFPB set it up, so the bank had to pay money to La Raza or Urban League instead, called it consumer education or housing counseling. But these groups weren't helping the people who got charged the fees. They were running political operations, Cooper interjected. Senator, is that an accurate characterization? Warren was struggling now. The CFPB settlement structure was designed to provide broad community benefit beyond just individual remediation. The organizations that received funding were providing valuable services. They were providing political activism. Trump said Treasury Department analyzed this 2 years ago, put out a whole report about it, found systematic political bias in where the money went. Every organization that got CFPB money was a left-wing group. Not one conservative organization, not one neutral group, only progressive activists. He held up the Treasury report, official government document, not something he had made up. You designed a federal agency that could force banks to pay billions to your political allies. That's not consumer protection. That's a slush fund. That's corruption with a government seal on it. Warren tried again. The CFPB has protected millions of consumers from predatory lending. The CFPB has been a political money laundering operation. $5.4 billion to progressive groups that support candidates like you. You built that. You designed it that way. It wasn't an accident. It was the plan from the beginning. Trump moved to his next section before Warren could respond. Pulled out stock trading records, spreadsheets showing dates and amounts. Now, let's talk about your work on the Senate Banking Committee. You've been on that committee since 2013, 11 years. You get classified briefings, information about upcoming regulations, about financial markets, about what the government is planning. Very valuable information. The kind of information that could make someone a lot of money if they traded on it. He showed the trading records. These are your stock trades, public information. Senators have to disclose them. Let's look at the pattern. Cooper and the audience watched as Trump methodically went through trade after trade, each one following the same pattern. Classified briefing. Trade within days. Profit or avoided loss. March 2015. You attend a classified banking committee briefing about new credit card regulations. The briefing details what the regulations will say, how they'll affect credit card companies. 3 days later, you buy $20,000 of Visa stock. 1 week after that, the regulations are publicly announced. They're very favorable to credit card companies. Visa stock jumps 12%. You make $2,400 in 8 days. Warren interrupted. My investments are managed by a financial advisor who, these aren't in a blind trust. These are direct trades. Your name on them, your decision. Trump kept going. July 2016, classified a briefing about European banking crisis and how it's going to hit U.S. banks. 2 days later, you sell $50,000 of financial sector stocks. 1 week later, the crisis hits. Stocks drop 15%. You avoided losing $7,500 because you sold before the public knew about the crisis. He showed more examples. September 2017, November 2018, April 2019. Each time the same pattern: classified briefing, trade, profit. We analyzed all your trades during your time on banking committee. 23 trades that came within 5 days of classified briefings. 23 times you traded right after learning information the public didn't have. And all 23 times, you either made money or avoided losses. Cooper asked, "Senator, the timing does seem notable." Warren's face was flushed. "I don't personally manage every single trade. My financial advisor makes recommendations based on market conditions, based on information you give him from classified briefings." Trump pulled out SEC regulations. Securities and Exchange Commission rules are very clear. You cannot trade on material, non-public information. You sat in classified briefings where you learned what regulations were coming, which banks were in trouble, which policies would help or hurt financial companies. Then you traded on that information, made yourself $2.4 million doing it. He held up a document with an official seal. SEC has opened an investigation into your trading because the pattern is undeniable. This isn't me making accusations. This is the Securities and Exchange Commission looking at insider trading by a United States senator. Warren tried to pivot to attacking him. This is exactly what I'm talking about. When you challenge the powerful, when you fight for working families, they come after you with, "I'm not coming after you with anything except your own records." Trump's voice was firm. "Your contracts, your tax returns, your trading records, your settlement documents, everything I've shown tonight is public information. Your signature, your trades, your money. I did not make any of this up." He pulled out the final section. Employment documents, Harvard faculty listings, and we haven't even talked about Pocahontas yet. The audience stirred. That nickname always got a reaction. Warren's anger flared. "That is a racist slur. And I will not sit here while you—" "It's not racist. It's accurate. You claim to be Native American. You used it to get hired at Harvard. You listed yourself as a minority on faculty directories. You built your early academic career on claiming Cherokee heritage." He showed Harvard's diversity reports from the 1990s. Faculty listings showing Elizabeth Warren listed as Native American. Press releases from Harvard celebrating their first woman of color on the law faculty. Harvard thought they were hiring a minority candidate. They counted you in their diversity statistics. They put you in promotional materials about their commitment to diversity because you told them you were Native American. Warren tried to explain, "My family told me stories about our heritage. I grew up with—" "You took a DNA test. Trump pulled out the results, made a big show of reading them. This was your test. You released it yourself in 2018. The results showed you are somewhere between 164th and 1024th Native American. That means you have less Native American ancestry than the average white American." He let that sink in. Less than average. But you used it to claim minority status for decades to get hired, to advance your career. You took a position that should have gone to an actual Native American, an actual minority candidate. The Cherokee Nation put out a statement. Trump continued, said you are not Cherokee, said you dishonored real Native Americans by claiming their heritage for professional advantage. But you didn't apologize. You called it a mistake. Decades of lying was just a mistake. Warren was visibly shaking now. My family history. Your family history doesn't make you Native American. any more than my liking tacos makes me Mexican. You lied, you got caught, and you won't own it." Trump stepped back from the table, gestured at all the evidence spread across it. Contracts, tax returns, trading records, settlement documents, employment applications. A career's worth of contradiction between her public image and her private actions. "So, Senator, you spent an hour tonight telling America I'm corrupt, that I sold out to corporations, that I betrayed working families. Let's review what we've learned about you." He counted on his fingers. "You made $10 million from the corporations you now attack. You built a federal agency that funneled $5 billion to political groups. You committed insider trading on Senate Banking Committee for personal profit. You lied about being Native American to advance your career. And you did all of this while positioning yourself as the champion of working people." He turned to the audience. "She lives in a $5 million mansion in Cambridge. She's worth $12 million. She makes $400,000 a year from Harvard to teach one seminar, one class. She hasn't taught a full course load in years, but she's going to fight for working families from her mansion while trading on insider information." Warren stood up abruptly, her voice shaking with anger or fear or both. This is character assassination. This is exactly what happens when you challenge powerful interests. They dig through decades of work and twist everything. I didn't twist anything. Trump remained seated, calm. "I showed your contracts, your tax returns, your trades, your employment applications. These are facts, public records, your signature on documents. If those facts make you look bad, that's not my fault. That's yours." The audience was riveting. This had gone from a town hall to something else entirely. A prosecution, an exposure. 200 people watching a political figure confront evidence she couldn't explain away. Warren looked at Cooper desperately. "Anderson, this is not a legitimate town hall. This is an ambush. These are documents Mr. Trump has presented," Cooper said carefully. "Do you want to specifically address any of the allegations? I have addressed them. He's mischaracterizing legal work that was completely proper, taking trades out of context." An audience member shouted, "Did you make $10 million from corporations or not?" Warren turned toward the voice. "I provided expert legal testimony, which is a standard yes or no." Several audience members called out. Warren's composure was cracking. "It's not a yes or no question. Bankruptcy law is complex and requires it is a yes or no question." Trump said quietly, "You made $10.3 million from corporations. Yes or no? You traded stocks after classified briefings. Yes or no? You lied about being Native American. Yes or no?" Those are all yes or no questions, Professor. And the answers are all yes. For the next 15 minutes, Elizabeth Warren tried every defense she'd ever used, every tactic that had worked in Senate hearings, every professorial explanation that had convinced students and voters. None of it worked. She tried the victim narrative. This is what the powerful do when you threaten them. They attack you with an audience member interrupted. How is showing your tax returns an attack? Those are your numbers. She tried to reframe. The real issue here is that Donald Trump is trying to distract from his own another voice from the audience. We just watched you for an hour talking about his corruption. Now he's showing us yours. Answer the question. She tried technical explanations. In bankruptcy proceedings, expert witnesses are engaged to provide testimony on matters of law, and Trump cut through it. You helped travelers' insurance avoid paying asbestos victims. You can use all the fancy legal language you want. That's what you did. Yes or no? Warren's voice was rising, losing the controlled professor tone. I provided analysis in a legally complex situation where yes or no. It's not that simple. It is that simple. Trump said, "You keep saying you fight for working people, but you made 10 million helping corporations fight against working people. That's not complex. That's hypocrisy." Cooper tried to moderate. "Senator Warren, I think what the audience is asking for is a direct response to the dollar amounts. Did you receive these payments from these corporations?" Warren looked at Cooper like he'd betrayed her. CNN was supposed to be friendly territory, but even Cooper couldn't ignore the evidence sitting on the table between them. "I received fees for expert testimony in bankruptcy cases. That is standard practice for law professors. Did you receive $212,000 from Travelers Insurance?" Trump asked directly. Silence. Warren staring at him. "Yes or no, Senator?" More silence. "The contract is right here with your signature. Either you're going to confirm it or call it a forgery. Which is it?" Warren's hands were shaking. She looked at her staff in the wings, but they were helpless. There was no spin for this. The documents were real. Everyone could see them on the monitors throughout the hall. "I received payment for legal services," she said finally, voice barely above a whisper. $212,000 from Travelers Insurance. Yes or no? Yes, but thank you. Trump moved on before she could qualify. "Did you funnel $5.4 billion through CFPB to political organizations?" They were consumer protection organizations, providing LARSA is a consumer protection organization. They provide housing counseling. They're a political advocacy group. Yes or no? Warren stood up again. She couldn't stay seated anymore, needed to feel like she had some control. "I'm not going to play this game where you reduce complex policy questions to, 'Did you trade stocks after classified banking committee briefings?' Yes or no?" "My financial advisor, yes or no? I made trades that were yes or no." Warren's voice cracked. "You're not going to bully me," with an audience member stood up. A woman in her 50s, working class, by her appearance. "I voted for you. I gave you money. I believed you were different. Did you trade on insider information or not? Just tell us." Warren looked at the woman, saw the betrayal in her face, saw the same expression on faces throughout the audience. These weren't Trump supporters trying to take her down. These were regular people who'd believed in her, who'd thought she represented them. "I followed all legal guidelines, for that's not an answer." The woman shouted, "You spent an hour telling us Trump is corrupt. Are you corrupt too? Just tell the truth." Warren's eyes were wet now. Whether from anger or shame or fear, it was hard to tell. Hard. "I have spent my entire career fighting for working families. Everything I've done has been in service of you made 10 million from corporations," Trump said, his voice cutting through her rising emotion. "That's a fact. You funneled 5 billion to political groups. That's a fact. You traded after classified briefings. That's a fact. Those aren't characterizations or interpretations. Those are facts. Your facts." Warren turned on him with sudden fury. "You want to talk about facts? You're a failed businessman who bankrupted casinos. You're a reality TV star who never worked an honest day in your life. I'm not the one on trial here tonight," Trump said calmly. "You are, because you spent an hour attacking me, and I responded with evidence, real evidence. Your contracts, your trades, your employment records. That's the difference between us, Professor. When you attack me, you use rhetoric. When I respond, I use receipts." The audience reacted, some applause, some gasps. Everyone riveted. Cooper tried one more time to give Warren an out. "Senator, If you could just address the specific allegations. Warren looked at Cooper, looked at Trump, looked at the audience that had cheered her an hour ago and now sat in judgment, looked at the documents spread across the table that she couldn't deny. She made a decision. I'm not going to participate in this circus anymore. And she walked off stage. Not a graceful exit, not a strategic retreat, just walking away mid-confrontation with Trump still standing there, with questions still hanging, with evidence still on the table. The audience didn't know how to react. Some started to applaud but stopped. Some whispered to each other, most just sat in stunned silence at what they'd witnessed. Cooper looked at his producers, at Trump, at the empty chair where Warren had been sitting. No one had a script for this. Trump gathered his documents back into his folder, spoke to Cooper, but really to the cameras. She wanted to talk about corruption, Anderson. We talked about it, her corruption, and when confronted with evidence, she couldn't spin. She ran away. He walked off stage, not rushed, not dramatic. Just a man who'd accomplished what he came to do. The camera stayed on the empty stage, the empty chairs, the place where minutes before America had watched a senator be destroyed by her own records. Cooper tried to wrap up, stammered through some closing remarks, but everyone knew the only thing that mattered had already happened. Warren had been exposed, confronted with evidence she couldn't deny, and she'd run. Within minutes, the video was uploaded to every platform, not edited by partisan hacks, just raw footage from CNN's official feed. Elizabeth Warren being systematically dismantled with document after document. Her growing panic, her inability to answer simple questions, her final flight from the stage. The clip went viral immediately. 10 million views in the first hour, 50 million by morning, 100 million by the end of the week. Not because of clever editing, not because of spin, just because millions of people watched a politician who'd built her career on righteousness being confronted with evidence of hypocrisy and having no answer. The first call came at 11 p.m. that night. Warren was in her hotel room in Atlanta. Her staff clustered around, trying to figure out damage control. Her phone rang, blocked number. She almost didn't answer. Then, did Elizabeth? It's Nancy Pelosi, former speaker, still the most powerful Democrat in Congress. Warren felt a surge of hope. Support from Pelosi could turn this around. Nancy, thank God. I need you to listen. Pelosi's voice was ice. What happened tonight was a disaster, not for Trump, for you, for the party. You went on national television and couldn't answer basic questions about your finances. He ambushed me with he showed your tax returns, your contracts, your trades. Those aren't ambush materials. Those are your records. And you couldn't explain them. Warren felt tears threatening. I tried to explain. He wouldn't let me. You couldn't explain because there is no explanation, Pelosi said flatly. You made millions from corporations while attacking corporations. You used CFPB as a political slush fund. You traded on classified information. Elizabeth, I've been in politics for 40 years. I know corruption when I see it. And tonight, America saw it in you, Nancy. The Senate Democratic Caucus is meeting tomorrow. There will be calls for you to step down from Banking Committee. I can't protect you from that. I won't protect you from that. The line went dead. Warren stared at her phone. Nancy Pelosi, the ultimate loyalist, the person who defended Democrats through every scandal, had just abandoned her. After one night, her chief of staff was watching CNN on his laptop, pulled it up so Warren could see. Every show was covering it, not just Fox News gleefully playing the clips. MSNBC, CNN, Even networks that normally defended Democrats were showing the evidence, the contracts, the trades, the numbers that didn't lie. Warren exposed the corporate consultant who became consumer advocate, read one Chiron. Senator Warren, unable to explain $10 million in corporate payments, read another. Did Elizabeth Warren commit insider trading? A third asked. Her phone kept ringing. Reporters, staffers, donors. She stopped answering. Let it ring and ring and ring. At 2:00 a.m., unable to sleep, she checked social media. It was brutal. The video had been clipped into dozens of segments, each one showing her failing to answer a question, each one showing her growing panic. The final walk-off played over and over. She looked guilty because she is guilty. Had 50,000 retweets. Harvard professor who made $10 million from corporations lectures us about greed had 70,000. The look on her face when Trump asked yes or no was a meme with 100,000 shares. Even progressives who'd supported her were turning. I defended her through Pocahontas. I can't defend this. The evidence is real. That had been retweeted by major progressive influencers. By morning, the polling was devastating. Her favorability had dropped 23 points overnight. Among Democrats, she'd fallen from 83% favorable to 52% favorable. Among all voters, she was underwater, 38% favorable, 57% unfavorable. But worse than the polling were the calls from donors. Major donors who'd supported her Senate campaigns, who'd been ready to fund a presidential run. Elizabeth, this is Tom. Tom Steyer, billionaire progressive donor. He'd given her campaigns millions. I can't support you anymore. What Trump showed last night, that CFPB money going to political groups. I funded some of those groups. This makes all of us look corrupt. Tom, if you'll just let me explain. There's nothing to explain. The settlements are public. The organizations are political. You designed a federal agency to fund progressive activism with bank settlement money. That's corruption. I can't be associated with it. Click. Another call. Senator Warren, this is Michael Bloomberg. Even Bloomberg, who had run against her for president, had reached out, not to help, to condemn. Your CFPB scheme was brilliant. Actually, forcing banks to pay progressive groups instead of harmed consumers. I'm almost impressed. But now that it's exposed, every Democrat is going to face questions about whether we support using federal agencies as political slush funds. You've handed Republicans ammunition for a generation. Click. By end of day one, Warren had lost 15 major donors. By end of week one, 47 donors had publicly announced they were no longer supporting her. Day 3, the Senate Ethics Committee announced a formal investigation into her trading. Not partisan Republicans launching a witch hunt. The Bipartisan Ethics Committee, including 3 Democrats, voting unanimously to investigate. Day 5, the Securities and Exchange Commission confirmed they were reviewing her banking committee trades for potential insider trading violations. The Stock Act was clear. Members of Congress couldn't trade on non-public information. The pattern Trump had exposed met the legal definition. Day 7. Warren held a press conference in Boston trying to get ahead of the story. It went even worse than the CNN town hall. Reporter, Senator, did you or did you not make $212,000 from Travelers Insurance? Warren, I provided expert testimony in a complex bankruptcy case. Reporter, yes or no? Warren, it's not a yes or no question. Reporter, it literally is. Did they pay you $200,000? That's a yes or no question. Warren tried to pivot. The real issue here is that Donald Trump is trying to distract from another reporter. Senator, with respect, Trump isn't here. We're asking you about your record. Did you make $10 million from corporations? Warren, over 17 years, I provided legal services. Reporter, so yes, Warren, I provided services that were reporter. Senator, can you just say yes? You made $10 million from corporations. That's a fact. Can you just acknowledge it? The press conference lasted 12 minutes before her staff ended it. The video went viral. Warren unable to give straight answers to straight questions. Again, day 10, Harvard announced they were placing her on administrative leave, pending a review of her hiring. The faculty diversity report from 1995 that listed her as Native American was getting renewed attention. Had she committed fraud to get hired? The Massachusetts Bar Association opened an investigation. Day 14, Chuck Schumer, Senate Majority Leader, called her into his office. Warren knew what was coming. Elizabeth the caucus met. The votes aren't there to keep you on banking committee. There are calls to remove you from every committee. Chuck, you can't. I can't protect you. The evidence Trump showed isn't going away. Every Democrat on banking committee is facing questions about whether they knew about your trading. Every Democrat is facing questions about whether they support CFPB being used as a slush fund. You're toxic. Warren felt the walls closing in. How long do I have? Banking committee vote is Monday. You'll be removed. Then probably Judiciary, Finance, every committee except maybe Environment and Public Works, because nobody cares about that one. So I'm just a backbencher. You're lucky if you're that, Elizabeth. There are members calling for your resignation, not expulsion. They know they don't have the votes for that. But resignation and those calls are coming from Democrats. Warren left Schumer's office in a daze, walked through the Capitol hallways where staffers and senators avoided eye contact. Where she'd once been, greeted warmly now, people found reasons to turn down other corridors. Week 3, her book sales collapsed. Fighting Chance and her other books about economic justice had sold steadily for years. Now bookstores were returning them. Amazon showed them with 1-star reviews. How to Profit from Corporations While Pretending to Fight Them read one review with 10,000 upvotes. Her speaking fees evaporated. Universities that had paid her $50,000 per speech to talk about economic inequality were canceling. In light of recent revelations about Senator Warren's corporate consulting work, we've decided to go in a different direction. Week 4, her Massachusetts approval rating hit 32%. In Massachusetts, a state she'd won with 64% out of the vote. Now 2/3 of her own constituents disapproved of her. The Boston Globe, which had endorsed her repeatedly, ran an editorial calling for her resignation. Senator Warren built her career on attacking corporate corruption while secretly profiting from it. This betrayal of public trust is disqualifying. She should resign and allow voters to elect someone who actually represents their values. Week 5, the New York Times published a comprehensive investigation. 3 reporters had spent weeks tracking down every corporate client Warren had worked for, every dollar she'd earned, every case where she'd helped corporations avoid liability. The Professor's Profit. How Elizabeth Warren Made Millions from Corporate America was the headline. The article was devastating. 12,000 words documenting client after client, case after case. 10.3 million in total payments. And the kicker, in many of these cases, workers or victims had ended up getting less money because of Warren's expert testimony helping the corporations restructure. I voted for Warren, one former steelworker told the Times. Now I find out she helped my company cut my pension. I lost $20,000 a year because of her and she made $90,000 from it. Week 6, Senate Ethics Committee issued its preliminary findings. The investigation was ongoing, but the preliminary report was damning. Senator Warren's trading activity shows a pattern consistent with trading on material non-public information obtained through her committee work. While we have not completed our investigation, the evidence gathered thus far raises serious questions about violations of the Stock Act. Week 8. Warren sat in her Cambridge house, the $5.44 million house that was now mentioned in every article about her reading the latest polling. Her 2028 presidential chances were at 0%. Actually, zero, not even 1%. Pollsters had stopped including her name because she was irrelevant. But worse, her re-election chances in Massachusetts were underwater. If the election were today, she'd lose by 15 points to any Republican challenger. After 10 years in the Senate, she'd become so toxic that Massachusetts, deep blue Massachusetts, would rather have a Republican. Her marriage was fracturing. Her husband, Bruce, had been supportive at first, but the scrutiny was too much. Reporters camped outside their house, their neighbors avoiding them, their friends no longer calling, Harvard colleagues pretending not to see them on campus. "I can't do this anymore," Elizabeth Bruce said one evening as they sat in their living room with the curtains drawn so reporters couldn't see in. "We can't go anywhere, can't do anything. Our lives are destroyed. It's temporary," Warren said without conviction. "This will blow over. It's been 2 months. It's getting worse, not better. Every day there's a new article, a new investigation, a new revelation about money you made or trades you did. When does it end?" Warren had no answer because she didn't know. The Senate ethics investigation was ongoing. The SEC investigation was ongoing. The Massachusetts bar investigation was ongoing. Harvard's review was ongoing. Every day brought new subpoenas, new requests for documents, new depositions. Week 10, Politico published a story about donors fleeing not just Warren, but any Democrat associated with her. The Warren Effect: How one senator's corruption scandal is poisoning Democratic fundraising. The article documented how major donors were now asking candidates if they'd ever taken money from CFPB-funded organizations, if they'd ever supported Warren's policies, if they'd ever traded stocks while serving on committees with classified briefings. Warren has become such political poison that Democrats are running away from positions they held 6 months ago. The article concluded, her corruption has tainted progressive economic policy for a generation. Week 12, Warren made her decision. She couldn't win re-election, couldn't function in the Senate with no committee assignments, couldn't show her face in public without reporters shouting questions she couldn't answer, couldn't even stay married to a man who was done with the scrutiny. She called Chuck Schumer. "I'm going to resign." Silence on the line. "Then when?" "End of the month. I'll announce next week." "Elizabeth, I'm sorry it came to this." "No, you're not. Nobody is. Everyone's relieved I'm finally leaving." She hung up before he could respond. The resignation announcement came on a Friday afternoon. Not a press conference, just a written statement released through her Senate office. "After much reflection and consultation with my family, I have decided not to seek re-election to the United States Senate. I will resign my seat effective at the end of this month. I am proud of the work I've done to fight for working families, to hold corporations accountable, and to build a more just economy. I leave public service knowing I gave everything to the fights I believed in. No mention of the investigations, no mention of the evidence Trump had presented, no acknowledgement of the corruption. Just the same rhetoric about fighting for working families that now rang completely hollow. The media reaction was universal relief. Warren's long overdue exit read one headline. Finally, Senator Warren does the right thing, read another. Even sympathetic outlets couldn't muster much defense. Elizabeth Warren's resignation ends one of the most spectacular political implosions in modern American history, wrote a political columnist who'd previously supported her. She went from presidential frontrunner to disgraced former senator in 12 weeks. The speed of her fall is matched only by its completeness. She's not retiring with dignity. She's fleeing in disgrace from a scandal she can't spin away. On her last day in the Senate, Warren walked through the halls one final time, cleaned out her office, said goodbye to staff who were already looking for new jobs. No other senators came to her office, no farewell reception, no tribute on the Senate floor. She just left. 6 months after the CNN town hall, Elizabeth Warren was living quietly in her Cambridge house, the house that had become a symbol of her hypocrisy. She left the house rarely. Groceries delivered, no public appearances, no interviews, no statements. The investigations had concluded. SEC had fined her $3.2 million for insider trading. Senate Ethics Committee had issued a formal rebuke meaningless since she'd already resigned, but still on the record. Massachusetts Bar had suspended her law license. Harvard had revoked her tenure. She'd kept the house, but sold her other properties to pay legal fees and fines. Her net worth had dropped from $12 million to maybe $4 million. Still rich, but not rich enough to feel safe. Her marriage had ended in divorce. Bruce had moved out west somewhere. Didn't tell her where. Didn't want her knowing. Her political career was over. Her academic career was over. Her reputation was destroyed. Elizabeth Warren had gone from a name associated with fighting for working families to a name associated with hypocrisy and corruption. And it had all happened because she'd tried to attack Donald Trump's corruption. And he'd responded by showing America hers. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The professor who'd built a career explaining how systems were rigged had rigged multiple systems in her own favor. The consumer advocate had been a corporate hired gun. The champion of working families had made millions from corporations while trading on inside information. The woman who attacked inequality had lived in a mansion while lecturing others about greed. Trump had exposed it all in 90 minutes on live television with documents she couldn't deny in front of an audience that had started by applauding her and ended by watching her flee. Warren, destroyed by her own records, became the defining political story of the cycle. Not because Trump had attacked her unfairly, but because he'd attacked her fairly with evidence, and she'd had no defense. A year after the town hall, Politico ran a retrospective. The night Elizabeth Warren's career died. The article reconstructed everything that had happened. The preparation, the ambush, the evidence, the meltdown, the aftermath, the conclusion. Warren's fall wasn't tragic. It was deserved. She'd spent years attacking others for sins she was committing on a larger scale. Trump didn't destroy her career. He just exposed who she really was. Her career destroyed itself. In her Cambridge house, Warren read the article on her iPad, wanted to write a response, wanted to explain, wanted to defend herself. But there was nothing to say. The evidence was public. The investigations had confirmed it all. The voters had rendered their judgment. She'd gone on CNN to attack Trump's corruption and ended up exposing her own. That was the story. That was the legacy. That was the truth. And no amount of professorial explanation could make it anything